Memphis needs resources. There's no doubt about that. But one of those resources is not the National Guard. What we actually need is better infrastructure, stronger schools, affordable housing, and real opportunities for home ownership. But instead, we're spending taxpayer dollars, your dollars, on something that's nothing more than window dressing. Here's the thing. If you're for this deployment, you're not thinking about the costs. People love to call themselves fiscally conservative in today's political climate, but you can't support deploying the National Guard in American cities and still claim that. The math just doesn't add up. So let's do the math. Let's just say 100 troops are getting deployed to Memphis. We don't know the official number, but let's just say 100. Keep it right there. The military pay chart is different for each rank. But let's just assume that most of these soldiers are going to be first year E4s, and that's a salary of around $3,675 a month per soldier. Now you got to add per diem and lodging to that at $110, and for meals, another $68, which equals $178 each. Then, depending on what orders they're on, you got to throw in hazard duty pay, which is an extra $150 a month. That's already $400,360 for 1 month for 100 soldiers being deployed to Memphis. And that's me being generous. We still haven't added in logistics for fuel, equipment. Once you add that in, that pushes it closer to $500,000. Now, compare that to the average Memphis police officer salary. The average Memphis police officer only makes $60,000 a year. For the same money, you could hire 7 police officers for the whole year for 1 month of 100 soldiers in Memphis. And that's me lowballing it. If you got E7s, which every unit is going to have, and you got O3s, which are captains, which every unit is going to have, the salaries get higher. A E7 makes around $6,000 a month, and a captain makes close to $9,000 a month. Also, keep in mind that every year you're in the Army, you get a pay raise. So this is me lowballing the numbers. But the question then becomes, what could you do with $400,000 a month in Memphis if you wasn't burning it on this short-term deployment? Well, you could fund mental health checks. How many mental health checks you think you can do for $500,000? You can pay for free lunches. I ain't talking about for like those on SNAP. You can just pay for school lunches for everybody. If you go to school, lunch should be free anyway. You can pay for that. You could have addiction services. You can have more addiction services for people who are addicted. You can hire teachers, man. Right now, Memphis and Shelby County is suffering from a lack of teachers. You could hire a lot more teachers and give them raises to the ones you currently have. You can strengthen background checks and gun safety programs. Or you can invest in real community policing. Those are proven to lower crime. High-paying jobs, home ownership, strong schools, mental health resources, and smart policing. And let me be clear, this isn't the National Guard's fault. They're just following orders. They're just doing what the governor says they should do. They don't have independent law enforcement authority, though. They're not trained to arrest people. At best, all they can do is just support police. At worst, it's just expensive window dressing. And here's the thing, man. From what I found, the guardsmen being sent here aren't even from Memphis units. There's no indication that the guardsmen being deployed in Memphis are from Memphis. So none of that money stays in the city. Somebody from outside of the city is going to get all that money I just laid out for you. So the real question is, When are you going to deploy teachers? When are you going to deploy community activists? When are we going to bring better paying jobs into the hood? Because most folks in high crime areas aren't criminals. They're just looking for help. And the guard may make things quieter for a moment. But then what? But then what? We get so caught up in the now and wanting something done that we forget to ask, okay, then what? Do we fix the roads? Do you invest in businesses in the hood? Do you support the families? Or do you just pick up and leave, leaving the same problems behind? Until leadership starts funding things that actually change lives, the National Guard is nothing but an expensive Band-Aid. It is something to make people feel good at the moment, but it's not a long-term sustainable change. There was a press conference where the Shelby County Republicans made it clear that they were all for the National Guard being deployed to Memphis. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, Memphis is in Shelby County, so I'm quite possibly that some of these Shelby County Republicans actually live in Memphis. So I'm not going to disparage them. But they made it clear that they want the National Guard in Memphis. But what they're not clear on is what they want the National Guard to do. Typically, the National Guard does not have the training nor authority to arrest people, to do any investigations. Only thing the National Guard is trained to do is kill, to be honest. And I'm saying that as an ex-guardsman. Like, we don't have the expertise in civil law enforcement. We don't. You're asking people who are not trained in civil law enforcement to do that. You would have been better off, even though this is still problematic, you would have been better off importing more cops. Maybe the state troopers into some of these areas in dealing with crime than the National Guard. Because the National Guard doesn't have that skill set. And I've been talking to people in high crime areas in Memphis. And one of them told me he's against this. And I asked him, hey man, why are you against this? And he said, because it's going to make an inconvenience on me. Only thing it's going to do is make me late traveling around the city. And now I have to worry about roadblocks and traffic stops. But a lot of y'all are okay with that because we feel like everybody in high crime areas are potentially criminals. That is the sentiment. But most of the people who are for the National Guard being deployed are not going to go to these high crime areas. Let's just be optimistic and say the National Guard and the FBI, the TBI, and every other law enforcement force that is coming to Memphis is 110% successful. Crime goes down. It's super manageable. Everything is great. What then? Are we going to start supporting businesses in these high crime areas? Are we going to invest money into these businesses, these local businesses? If they're deployed downtown, how are you going to revitalize downtown? And how do people in those neighborhoods get more money? That's the thing with the XAI plant that is basically in between Whitehaven and South Memphis. Those are good paying jobs, but nobody in those neighborhoods are benefiting from those good paying jobs. None of it. Nobody. Not even janitorial jobs. Nobody's benefiting from that. What you're going to have is a lot of people from outside of those neighborhoods coming in, taking that money and leaving those neighborhoods. What you need is more investments in those neighborhoods. Are you going to do that next? Because if not, then it just seems like you're making people's lives unnecessarily hard for no reason. It almost seems like the National Guard is being deployed just to secure Elon Musk's XAI. And Memphis Mayor Paul Young did a press conference where he said he wants the National Guard to help with beautification and homelessness. Because that's what they did in Washington, D.C. They just ran around, picked up trash, beautification. With those numbers I gave you, do you not think you can't hire some people in that neighborhood or wherever they're doing the beautification, somebody locally in the Memphis city area to do beautification? You want America's elite fighting force to come and pick up trash. 100 troops for about $500,000. You mean to tell me we couldn't take that money and give it to Memphians to pick up trash? I'll tell you right now, man, you give me $40 an hour, I'll be out there with a trash bag right now. And $40 an hour is a discount. It really is. For what we're paying for the National Guard, $40 an hour is a discount. Hell, $25 an hour, I'll be out there. It's a damn good little part-time job. Money is being spent. And everybody who tells you there's no money to go in the city are the same people right now willing to spend this money on the Guard, which tells you, when they tell you there's no money, that's a lie. The truth is, they're not willing to spend money on things that are really make a change. They're just willing to spend money on force, on shows of power. That's what they're willing to spend money on. Now, whether or not the National Guard comes here and crime goes down, I don't know. I don't know. They're not here right now, and I don't know how things are going to be. But honestly, I wish the best. I hope that the National Guard comes here and it goes swimmingly, crime goes down, and everybody is happy. But it's a slippery slope. Because one thing I know is the federal government doesn't give up power, ever. Once you give these folks this leeway, be prepared to lose other things. Be prepared for emergency to be called on other things. You think Republicans are going to be in office forever? They're not. What happens when a Democrat gets into office and he calls a nationwide emergency? It's too many guns. And he deploys the National Guard to go take your guns. What you going to do then? It's always the what's next that nobody thinks about. Right now, you feel good because you feel like a certain set of people are getting pressured. But you don't think about the other side of the coin, what can be taken from you. Because I swear for cheese and crackers, man, it never stops with one group. And you can use criminals to do a whole lot of things, man. Let me just tell you guys a story. I know I'm running late, but let me tell you a story. And I'll never forget this. And this is for you young kids. All you kids born in 2000, you don't remember a world without the TSA. But there was. There was an event that happened, 9/11, where some terrorists flew some planes into the Twin Towers in New York City. And because of that, Americans were scared. And we gave a lot of power to the executive branch. We made something called the Patriot Act, which basically allowed the government to make the NSA spy on us, collect all our data, and made it so anytime we wanted to fly, we had to go through a butt-naked ass machine, take our shoes off in the name of safety. Now, when that happened, I was a soldier. And a lot of my soldier friends, when we was talking about this, we said this is a bad idea. And we said things would never be the same. We said, once this happened, this is the norm. And that bore out to be true. It never rolled back. All those authorities we gave President W. Bush have been used from every president ever since to unilaterally declare a war and to strip away some of our civil liberties. And I'm telling you right now, you may not think that deploying the National Guard to cities is a bad thing right now, but trust me, it always escalates. But that's the Common Knowledge Podcast. I try to update this thing weekly. I am doing an outro because my homie Keno said it's annoying when my podcast just cuts off abruptly. But you got any questions, comments, leave them on the podcast. I love to read your comments. You guys be safe. Peace.